Right, so we have Reaktor chosen here. I'm just going to check that it's the right one. Reaktor 6, W19, Simple FM2, that's okay. Now we're going to go to this section and select Instrument, so we have the right set of presets here. And as you can see, the first preset I've made here is init, and you will have this here. And it's just a sort of neutral vanilla setting of the carrier and the modulator. Let's take a quick look at the panel. The panel here, these are the controls for the carrier. These are the controls for the modulator. They are very similar. There is an ADSR for each. They are exactly the same. This controls the envelope for the carrier, and this controls the envelope for the modulator. Then on the modulator, of course, we have a control for the modulation index, which is the amount that the modulator puts its vibrato or the frequency modulation onto the carrier. There's also the control for feedback, which takes the modulator out and back into itself. And at the bottom here, we just have an output level, which is the output of the carrier. Of course, if the output level is turned to 0, we hear nothing. Then over here on the right, I've put in a little reverb piece. I just want to point out there may be a little bug in the program that this is quite difficult to click on because I think I've got the layers wrong, but if you persist, it will come to life. But anyway, this is not really important. This is just for fun. So let's start with the list of voices. The first one I asked you to make was a brass voice. So we're going to go here, click Store, type in brass, enter. Right, so now let's see what we've got. Let's turn the modulation index down. We're just listening to the output of the carrier here, which is a sine wave. So just like with subtractive synthesis, let's make this roughly the shape of the volume of the sound, the articulation of the sound. So a little bit of a slightly slower attack. We want the sustain level. And a little tiny bit of release. Okay, that's fine for a trumpet. It's just to make a start. Now let's add some modulation indexes so we start hearing what the modulator is doing. By the way, I've chosen a ratio of 1 to 1. Deciding on the ratio is something that you will gradually learn, but 1 to 1 gives a sort of standard sawtoothy-like wave sound. Okay, there we go. Let's start playing with the envelope of the modulator. Remember we said that brass, the harmonics open up after the note has started to play, so let's put a little bit of a attack time here. There we go, that's... And let's see if we can make this sound a bit richer by increasing some feedback. And I think I'll just reduce the modulation index a bit. Okay, there's a nice sort of warm brass sound. I'll leave it there for the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go Store and hit Return. And there we go, job done. Let's add a new preset and let's call it a string-like pad. I'll call it string pad. Enter. Okay, string pad. Again, I'm going to turn the modulation index down. Now that we said a string pad fades in a little bit more. Okay, let's put the modulation index back up. That was the brass sound, right? Okay, well that's okay, but we don't want it to open up, so let's reduce this attack time so the sound is there all the time. Okay, I think this needs to be a bit more sizzy to make a sort of string sound. that's better. I think we're getting close. So again, this is enough just to get an idea of how to manipulate the sounds just using the two envelopes that we have here. So I'm going to call that one done. Store, enter, and then let's add another. And this was going to be a mallet instrument. Okay, so let's type in mallet. Enter. Turn off the modulation index. Let's concentrate just on the shape of the sound. Well, a mallet instrument obviously has a very fast attack, and it doesn't sustain. A little bit more release. Okay, I think that's fine. And then let's just add the modulation index with what we've got, see what it sounds like. That is not what we want. Let's take the brightness down. Okay. That's getting more mallet-y. At this point, I think we might try changing the ratio. Oh, there we go. Perhaps that's a bit too... There we got a sort of marimba sound going there. It's even nice. I think it's nicer like that. Go. So that's close enough just to get the idea. And you can see all we're doing is manipulating the envelopes of the carrier and the envelope of the modulator, and then playing with different ratios to see how it sounds and adjusting the modulation index. And the only strange control we've got here is this thing called feedback, which just sort of smooths out the sound, makes it more generally brighter. Okay, so I'm going to hit store, enter. Let's add another. And this one, panpipe. Okay. We might get something interesting on this one. Let's hit enter. So again, turn down modulation index. So now I can... Right, our panpipe, obviously we want the sound to sustain. And we want a little bit of a slower attack. By the way, you'll notice that I'm not touching velocity sensing or scaling in this, just leaving it at the sort of neutral setting. If we want a bit more velocity on the overall volume or a bit more velocity on the modulator to change the tone as we play harder, but I'll leave that to you to experiment with. Okay, back to the panpipe. Okay, that's a reasonable shape. Now let's bring in the modulator. Let's live with what we've got for the moment. Well, that's interesting because there's a bit of a sort of puff at the beginning there. Let's change the ratio. I wonder what happened if we detune it. That's quite an interesting... Let's put some more velocity on that. Okay, there we have a nice little panpipe thing going. So let's hit store and enter. Next one, tubular bells. So let's add another preset. Tube bells. enter. Modulation index down. Let's get the shape of the tubular bell. We don't want sustain, but we want nice long release. And we're probably going to have a similar envelope on the modulator. And let's again live with what we've got. Put up the modulation index. Well, we've still got that malletty or panpipey type sound, but let's just. That's better. So we want the release up. That's better. I need a little more decay. I hope you're noticing that a lot of this is all about getting the envelopes right, and then we can just play with the ratio. Here I've got an inharmonic ratio, which I'm getting that just by twiddling the fine knob here. Okay, call that good for tubular bells. Store. Enter. Let's add the next one. Vibraphone. Well, that's going to be very similar. Vibe. Oh, enter. There we go. Right, here's our vibe. The moment it's tubular bells. Vibraphone is more carefully tuned than tubular bells. So let's take away our detune and just put this up. Then we got a reasonable vibe. Vibraphone, let's hit store and enter. Next one, add clarinet. Okay. Clary, enter. Well, turn off modulation index. This isn't a clarinet shape, so let's get that going. We want sustain. And a bit of a slower. That's roughly right. Let's see what we've got with modulation index. Well, that's of course not right at all. So first of all, let's put the ratio down to ones. Okay, let's make the sound sustain a little bit. Okay, the ratio isn't right. We're not getting the right waveform here. But remember some of the stuff we did in class, that the ratio of 2 to 1 gives us more like that clarinet sound, more like a square wave sound. And already we're right in the ballpark. So okay, we're going to call that done. So we'll hit store and then enter. And finally, a guitar. Let's try that. Add guitar. Enter. Turn the modulation index down. Let's listen to this guy again. Well, that's not a guitar shape. So the shape. I'm making the sound shorter at the top for high pitches. Okay, now let's try adding the modulation index. That doesn't really sound like a guitar. Let's go to 1:1 for the moment. Okay, let's get it more plucky. Let's see. That's getting there. Let's see if another ratio will work for us. How about 5:1? That doesn't sound too good. 3:1. That's not bad for a plucked sound. Oh, that's better. A little more decay. So I think this is a case where probably we're going to need more operators to really get the guitar sound. But in terms of a simple pluck, I think that will work for the moment. Okay, so we hit store. And there's something to get you started with doing these simple voices in FM. I hope this little video helps and that the snow clears up and we can get back to class. Thanks a lot.